welcome to Southern Sense Talk Radio with your host, the radio chick, Annie Ubelis. Join Annie on Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time with an open chat room full of her regulars. And yes, you can even call in. Call 917-889-3675. That's 917-889-3675 to be a part of the action on the phone line. Not able to listen live? Not a problem. You can always catch Annie, the radio chick, and Southern Sense Talk Radio podcasts in archives at southern-sense.com. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Southern Sense the right way.
Yeah, I think. You're listening here to Southern Sense on Blog Talk Radio, High Plains Media, SHR Media, up on Spreaker, iTunes, half a dozen other places. The heck with it. Just go to our website, the name of the show, put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the radio chick, along with my oh-so-intellectual and handsome co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett. Curtis, this is going to be a nightmare today. It's going to be a nightmare.
We can blame it on Hermine.
Well, right now, the eye of Tropical Storm Hermione is right passing over between Savannah and Charleston, which leaves me right smack in the middle, and my power has been going up and down faster than a pro yo-yo player. So right now, I am calling into the show using my cell phone because I've lost internet service. It's going up and down as well. I've no telephone service. My internet is coming off of my tablet. So it's going to be one of those days, Curtis, one of those days. And speaking of which, I was so busy trying to get myself set up with all my backup. My husband's got the generator going right now so that at least I've got power to my laptop. And in all the nutsiness, Curtis, I forgot to take all that work that I did so hard last night for the show and bring it into the office so I can know what the heck I'm doing on the show.
Oh.
Ay.
Well, we can do it on the dedication, so.
Oh, man. No, I do have the dedication here, so bear with me because now I'm doing everything one-handed because my headset to my cell phone crapped out. So if anything can go wrong, it is going wrong today. Oh, man, Curtis. But we're ready to rock and roll anyway, aren't we?
I am. Let's get it on the road.
All right. Well, welcome everyone that's listening in the studio as well as that's up in the chat room. Just bear with us as I try to get my bearings. And everyone that listens to the show knows that we start off with a dedication to a fallen hero. And today is no different. Today's dedication is going out to police officer Timothy Kevin Smith of the Eastman Police Department in Georgia. His end of watch, sadly, was Saturday, August 13th of this year. And this is from the Officer Down memorial page. Police officer Tim Smith was shot and killed while responding to reports of a subject carrying a firearm at the intersection of Smith Street and Main Street at approximately 9:30 p.m. on August 13th. Officer Smith made contact with the subject along the railroad tracks adjacent to the intersection. The man opened fire on Officer Smith, wounding him. Smith was able to return fire and informed dispatchers he had been shot. The subject fled the scene, but was apprehended 2 days later. Officer Smith had served in the Eastman Police Department for 5.5 years. He is survived by 3 children, 2 stepchildren, a fiancé, his parents, and 3 siblings. Officer Smith was murdered only 2 days before his 31st birthday. And this is from a message that was left on the Officer Down memorial page. It was written by Sergeant Ron Tomasi of Lake Murray Police Department, retired. And he wrote, "Dear Tim, and yet again I write another reflection for a brother officer taken from us by vermin. A long time ago, a group of Americans formed a government that guaranteed all Americans to live free from oppression and fear. As a member of the Thin Blue Line, the oath you took and the code we live by, protect and serve, continue that guarantee, even with the supreme sacrifice. To those of you who read these reflections and have not served on the Thin Blue Line, but live safe and in peace, free from fear and oppression because of police officers, remember the words of Sir Winston Churchill. Never before have so many owed so much to so few. Tim, may Almighty God bring his peace to your family, your service committed to memory, as well as he welcome you home. Continue to bless police officers everywhere, and God bless the United States of America. And this is from Macon.com, written by Joe Kovac. There are no tears in the lawman's eyes as he stands at attention in a downpour at a fallen police officer's funeral. The lawman, in full dress uniform, is a statue of resolve as rain streams from the low-tilted brim of his Navy campaign hat. But the image of him weeps. The lawman, an honor guard from the Fulton County Sheriff's Office, an unbowed sentry in a late summer deluge, was graveside at a ceremony next to the Solid Rock Church of God. The cemetery on the eastern outskirts of Eastman lies 2 miles from where police officer Timothy Kevin Smith was murdered, in the line of duty only 5 days earlier. The photographs of the honor guard, Sergeant Randall Lattimore, include with a raindrop dancing mid-splash from his hat, where a golden badge glistens in the gloom. Since Thursday, the day Smith was buried, the pictures have struck a chord in the law enforcement community across the region. The images require no captions. The spray of rain droplets themselves, frozen in time on an August afternoon, are a gusher of symbolism, tears of the unseen morning. Then there is Sergeant Lattimore himself, on watch, pensive, eyes locked dead ahead, his chin anchored over a tight collar. He is the bearing of fortitude, an unflinching countenance that can't help but speak to anyone who sees it. I am here for you. Even as the rain washed over them Thursday at Officer Smith's burial, members of the Honor Guard stood tall. No one on our team is thinking about how wet we are, said Sergeant Lattimore. Had it been snow, we would have sit in the snow. And this finally, to the family of Officer Smith, to the members of the Eastman Police Department. This is a poem called Final Inspection. The author is unknown. A policeman stood and faced his God, which must always come to pass. He hoped his shoes were shining just as brightly as his brass. Step forward now, policeman. How shall I deal with you? Have you always turned the other cheek? To my church have you been true? The policeman squared his shoulders and said, No, Lord, I guess I ain't, because those of us who carry badges can't always be a saint. But I have had to work most Sundays, and at times my talk was rough, and sometimes I've been violent because the streets are awfully tough. But I never took a penny that wasn't mine to keep, though I worked a lot of overtime when the bills got just too steep. And I never passed a cry for help, though at times I shook with fear. And sometimes, God forgive me, I've wept unmanly tears. I know I don't deserve a place among the people here, but they never wanted me around except to calm their fear. And if you've a place for me here, Lord, it needn't be so grand. I've never expected or had too much, but if you don't, I'll understand. There was silence all around the throne, where the states had often trod, as the policeman waited quietly for the judgment of his God. Step forward now, policeman. You've borne your burdens well. Come walk a beat on heaven's streets. You've done your time in hell. Today's show is dedicated to Officer Smith, but is also dedicated to all of the brave men and women out there who walk that thin blue line. God bless them all. And it also goes out to the brave men and women who serve in our military, to those that have served, who are serving, and who did serve. This show is dedicated to you as we play Last Call by Dave Gray.
my last call.
All right. Dave Bray, last call. And we're back. You're listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, High Plains Media, SHR Media. The heck with it. Just go to our website. The name of the show, Southern Sense. Put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the radio chick, along with my co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett, author extraordinaire. Curtis. What a day.
We're trying to recover from this hurricane, the first to hit Florida in like 11 years, and we hope it's another 25 to 30 years before we get hit by another.
Oh, man. Right now, my power has been going up and down, up and down, up and down. So I've got my laptop hooked up to the generator, and since my phone system and my internet is down, I'm using my tablet as a hotspot Wi-Fi and calling in to the show using my cell phone. So if the connection isn't all that great, I apologize, but we're having some technical difficulties here. Oh, man. Thank you, Tropical Storm Hermine. Just what I needed today.
Yeah.
Well, I do have to say that thankfully I sent my husband out for gasoline to keep the generator going. We've got the tub all filled with water, so if we lose water, at least we can flush the toilets. I've got cold salads in the refrigerator, so I don't have to worry about cooking. We're prepped. We're prepped and ready. Just I didn't need the power going up and down during the show. Oh, man.
Well, I had to do that some years ago when we lost power. We had like about 3 or 4 consecutive hurricanes in a row, and it almost got to be a commonplace thing. You know, we will fill the tub up with water and get batteries and get transistor radios for backup, communications. Those were the days.
Well, this is the day. This is the day. And, well, I got one good thing. I've got about over 6,000 gallons of water in the swimming pool. So if anything happens, we can always go take a dip in the pool.
We can pipe that down this way.
Oh, man. We're waiting for our guests to call in. We've got 2 great guests coming in on the show today. The first one is Tim Constantine. He started broadcasting at the ripe old age of 13 on radio, and he's still doing it decades later. So we're going to be talking with him. He's got a show out of the D.C. area. And then after that, for the second half, we have Melanie Graft. And I don't know if anyone remembers, but last year there was a huge kerfuffle down in Texas where she went and took her kid to the library, and as the kid is going to pick out a book at the age of 4, there is a book about the LBGT community in the children's section, promoting the LBGT lifestyle. What does a child at the age of 4 know about the LBGT community? Come on, really? It was not age appropriate for that section. So she fought with the library and the town she lived in to have the books removed from the children's section. And she caught a huge lot of flack on that one. So she's going to be joining us at 3 o'clock. So we're waiting for a guest to call in. So, Curtis, we've got, I guess, about 15 minutes to just chew at the fat until the guest calls in.
I've been taking notice of all the reports that in the national polling, Trump is either tied with Hillary or just ahead of her. So I think it's going to be a great turnaround. We still have about almost 2 months left, so that's plenty of time to really bury this woman.
Yeah, and we've got 3 debates going on, and the last one is going to be moderated by Chris Wallace of Fox News, but the other 3 are total liberals. I mean, Jesus, Anderson Cooper, really? Jesus. Oh, man. What Anderson Cooper knows about politics, you can put on the head of a pin, probably.
Well, they think they're the experts, and it wouldn't be a show or a debate without them on it,
So you've got 3 liberal moderators and 1 rhino. It's going to be interesting how it's going to play out. So, And I have a funny feeling Donald Trump will absolutely eviscerate Hillary Clinton. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping to not see Hillary in the White House, because that would be an absolute disaster, complete disaster.
Who's the Rhino?
Man. Well, Chris Wallace.
I thought he was liberal. Tell you the truth.
No. He is a registered Republican, but I consider him a rhino because he sits to the left of me, absolutely.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was thinking he was a liberal, so see how I feel about him.
Well, I see some people sitting in the studio listening in. If they want to join the conversation, just take your finger and press 1 on the dial pad, and we'll be happy to have you join with us. Otherwise, I'm just going to assume that you are just listening in. And welcome back, Kel. We missed you. I see if she's up in the chat room.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, Curtis. It's a crazy world, crazy world. And, of course, you got more of Hillary's emails, more of her pay-to-play that's coming to light, and she is not sitting behind bars. Matter of fact, just recently there's a gentleman, I forget what his name is, he was in the Navy about 6 or 7 years ago when he was just a kid. He took some pictures of inside the submarine he was serving on. Not a bright idea, but he wanted just a memento so that when he's in his old age, he can say to his grandkids, hey, look, this is where I served. This was the submarine I served on. This is where I was stationed. Just some pictures to remember. He wasn't trying to sell it to the Russians, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Don't tell me he got in trouble.
Yeah, he got himself sentenced to 1 year in prison. He gets sentenced for taking a couple of pictures, and Hillary Clinton is still walking around free? Really?
Well,
really?
He should have been a Clinton or Clintonite.
No, absolutely. His last name was not Clinton. Last name was not Kerry. Last name was not Biden. But because he was just a low-ranking Navy guy, pictures that were 6 or 7 years old, nothing top secret in them at that point in time. And matter of fact, they had the pictures up on TV, so they're absolutely declassified. They never went into the hands of the enemy, not like Hillary Clinton's emails did.
Yeah.
But she walked free.
We had a kid on the USS Nimitz when I was serving on that, which is one of our mightiest aircraft carriers. His name was Michael Walker, and he was part of the Walker family spy ring back in the 70s and 80s. Actually, his father and uncle go back to the 60s when they started spying for the Russians against the United States. But anyway, his father got him involved. He got a couple other family members involved in the spy ring. He would have them enlist or whatever into the Navy, get into top classified security type jobs and whatnot, and then start spying. And Michael Walker used to work pretty much next door to the office I worked out of, and at night he would take pictures of classified information because he, had access to that. And that guy got like about 30 years, and he was young. He was about 20, 22, 21 at the time. His father got life. His uncle got life, and there was a couple other people involved in the spy ring. And just to think that Hillary was the head of an agency like the State Department, and she did the things she did, and she just won for president. It's amazing.
She just recently had a security briefing as presidential candidate. Really? Now, the name of the kid that just got a year in prison, his name is Kristen Saucier. And he's from Vermont, Arlington, Vermont, and he was sentenced in federal court in Bridgeport. He pleaded guilty in May to unauthorized detention of defense information. And he also must serve 6 months of home confinement. Isn't that something?
It just shows you how corrupt this country is, and I don't know what's wrong with the FBI, why they don't have their act together. The guy practically said everything that this woman did was against the law, and then he gave her a pass. I don't understand.
Yeah, I was trying to cut and paste the link to the story at military.com, but unfortunately it's not letting me do that for some reason. All right, we've got a caller coming in, raising her hand, and let's bring in Sweet Sue from New Mexico. Good afternoon, Sue.
Hi,
Hey.
Annie. Hi, Curtis. You know, you was talking about these people who were picked to be the moderators for the presidential debate. Well, everybody listening, I suggest that you go to Wikipedia and then look up the Presidential Debate Commission. There is not one conservative on there. Now, I haven't been able yet to find out who gets and why they get on this commission, but if you go there, you can click. It'll show all of the people on this commission. Click on their names with the exception of 3. They don't have information, and you can find out everything you want to know. Now, one of the people I found really interesting is Carolyn Kennedy. Now, why is she on this commission? Number one, she's not the smartest, in my opinion, and she's definitely way, way left. But if you look at the people on this commission and why is Reince Priebus allowing this to happen, all he could say is, hey, you do something about this or we don't show up. And, all of these networks, they're relying on high volume of, people watching. They get a lot of money for these debates. But, everybody seems to be just laying back and, hey, let it go. The other thing I'm trying to find out, which will be interesting too, is who determines who's in the audience. Like we saw in the GOP debates, the audience was stacked with establishment people. And so I just wanted to throw that out for the listeners. And, everybody take a look at it because you need to know how and why these people are picked.
Well, this is interesting because I'm on the Wikipedia page right now, and there goes my power again. Lights just went down, so I can't even see my keyboard. Great. Let's see. It's listing the commission is headed by Frank Fahrenkopf, a former head of the Republican National Committee, and former White House Press Secretary Michael McCurry. And as of 2014, the board of directors consists of Howard Graham Buffett, John C. Danforth, Charles Gibson, John Griffin, Antonia Hernandez, John I. Jenkins, Newton N. Minow, Leon Panetta, Richard Parsons, Dorothy Ridings, Alan Simpson, Olympia Snow, Shirley Tigman. Now, this is what is showing up on Wikipedia. I'm not seeing what you were saying, Sue, about Carolyn Kennedy.
Oh, well, maybe it's been updated since I looked at it. When I looked at it, it had C. Kennedy, and then when I clicked on the name, that was Carolyn Kennedy. But, even with the ones that you read, they're either establishment or they're far left leaning. Why is Panetta part of this? He is tied into these Clinton emails. He's tied in with Huma and Hillary Clinton. Why is this man on this commission?
I don't know, but it's being sponsored. The predecessor to this commission was the League of Women Voters, which has a tendency to lean very left.
Oh, yeah.
So it's supposed to be a nonprofit controlled by both Democratic and Republican parties, but you see more of the Democratic Party in the leadership than you see the Republican Party. But they throw the Republicans a bone by putting Frank Fahrenkopf in charge of it. So it looks like it's bipartisan.
Hey, Sue, when you say Kennedy, are you talking about JFK's daughter, Caroline Kennedy?
Yes,
Or is
yes.
it another Kennedy?
Now, that was, I went in and I looked probably 1 or 2 in the morning. I was up and, I was checking all this stuff out. And they've obviously updated it since then. But in the past, she was on this commission, and if I am remembering right, I don't think Bennett was listed. So it's been updated. But, the fact Panetta blows my mind of all of them, because he is so much into the scandals that are coming up, daily.
Yeah, the web that they are weaving, this Obama administration with Hillary in cahoots. Judge Napolitano called President Obama an unindicted co-conspirator in her emails.
Of course
So,
he is. They
yeah.
were sending emails to Obama, and Obama had to know, and he was responding back to her. That's how he becomes a co-conspirator. He was aware, and he participated in the emails.
I don't know how she can get away with saying she turned over everything, and then we find out there's 15,000 more, and they don't get her for perjury. I don't understand it.
All right, well, I want to mention that I do see people popping up into the studio that have dialed into the show. If you do want to participate, or if you're my guest calling in because I don't recognize the numbers, please remember to press 1 so I can bring you on. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that you're just listening. I am waiting for my guest to call in, Tim Constantine. He has his own radio show, which is the Capitol Briefing, and I got a hand raised. I have to apologize. I am in the middle of a storm here, tropical storm Hermine.
Hello.
So my power has been going up and down. My internet service is out, so I'm using my tablet as a hotspot. So I apologize if things seem a little confusing, but just bear with us as we are in the eye of the storm at this moment. So, yeah, so I got area code 239. You're on the air live with Southern Sense. I'm your hostess, Annie, the radio chick. To whom am I speaking?
Annie, it's Tim Constantine. How are you?
All right.
Tim, as you can tell, we're having technical difficulty. And as I said...
Now, I smiled when you said that because I normally I do the show out of Washington, but I spent a couple days in Florida this week and have been trying to get back north. I thought I would be back in my regular studio in time for the show. I'm still sitting in Florida because of the storm, and everything got a little bit skew-whiffed here, so I smiled when you said that. I thought, gosh, I know that feeling.
Well, I'm here on the coastal South Carolina, and right now the eye of the storm is passing between Savannah and Charleston, so I'm dead center in this right now. So I have no mixer board. My mixer board is out. My main computer is out. I'm using a laptop and my cell phone. So talk about on the fly.
Well, thankfully, you sound great.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. But we have so much to talk to. I came across your article about Colin Kaepernick. You wrote a very, very witty article about that, which I have here. You have Black Wines Matter.
Black wines matter, you bet.
Yeah, matter of fact, his birth mother had been up on Twitter criticizing him, for not respecting the flag and the national anthem. You've got your own mother turning around telling you, shame on you.
Yeah, it's when you bum out mom, you've made a mistake. And last night I got a kick because they had a game last night, and in order to be disrespectful in a more respectful manner, he kneeled instead of sitting. So he refused to stand, but now we're trying to find a more appealing way of being disrespectful.
Yeah, here he is. He grew up in a life of privilege. He was given up for adoption because his black father abandoned his white mother before he was born. So she said, I can't do this on my own. I know I can't give him the life he deserves. So she gives him to be adopted. And who adopts him? a white couple. That makes sure that he gets the best schooling possible. He gets to go into professional football. No one's ever pulled a barrier to him, but yet he seems to think the freest nation in the world is racist.
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to see this because he should be. His life story is the poster boy for what America's all about. Nobody cared what his race was. This family wanted another child. He was actually their third child. They added him to the two children they already had, and they raised him as their own. They are his mom and his dad, and they gave him every great opportunity, and there was no attention to what his race was or anything else. And is there any racism in America? Of course there is. There's some crazy guy somewhere that does something crazy, but as a society, we've elected a black man twice in a row as president of the United States. As a society, we are nothing of what he described. And more importantly, that flag represents what we aspire to. It doesn't represent the one flawed character in some city in the Carolinas or, in New York City. Or there are flawed characters all over planet Earth. But that's not what that flag aspires to. It aspires to a great deal, and it represents a great deal, and a lot of blood's been shed to stand up for those ideals. And for this guy who grew up in what, should be the shining example of what America's all about, to turn around and complain it's disappointing at best.
I was going to say, it's inherent in human nature to have some prejudice. I prefer chocolate ice cream over vanilla. We all have our personal preferences. But it doesn't mean that I'm racist. It doesn't mean that America as a whole is racist. It doesn't mean our founding fathers didn't want freedom for everyone, because they did argue over it when they were creating the Constitution. They did, before we were even a nation, argue over whether or not slavery is proper, whether or not bigotry is proper. But we have grown as a nation, and that he should be celebrating instead of trying to rip it apart.
Yeah, I saw a comment yesterday by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who has always been my favorite basketball player of all time. I played ball, and Kareem was an amazing athlete, tremendous player. I would argue the best basketball player ever. And yet he's, in recent years, has taken to commentary. There's nothing wrong with that. That's, God bless him. He's 69 years old, I think, now, and he is out. He writes for Time Magazine. He does a number of things. But he said what Kaepernick is doing is very patriotic. And he said things haven't changed at all since Muhammad Ali did his protest back in the late 1960s, and the athletes at the 68 Olympics did their Black Power protest. And I thought, gosh, if you have not seen any change in the United States of America since the 1960s, you simply aren't watching.
No, not at all. And we do have a listener that has called in. She should join the conversation. Sue, go ahead.
Yes, I was wanting to know, how much does his conversion to Islam play into what he is doing? I'm almost thinking that this is more related to his conversion versus, Black Lives Matter or Black Power.
Could I take a shot at that?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We don't know what's going on in his head. I'm aware that I'm merely observing. But maybe more than anything, he has been dating over the past few months a woman who is black, who is a disc jockey, and who is very active in the Black Lives Matter and blacks are being somehow treated wrong movement. And I will tell you, being a guy, that fall in love, sometimes what that woman tells you becomes gospel. And so I would guess, again, I'm not in his head, but I would guess, if anything, she has had as much of an impact on him as any conversion or any personal life experience.
Thank you.
What I find amazing is that, here he is protesting the American flag, and we have people still being murdered in Detroit and Chicago. And the vast majority that are being murdered are black. And where is the outrage there? You have the Chicago police chief out there decrying the violence and saying, we've got to do something about it. Our youth are dying in the streets. But where is his outrage there?
Right. It was interesting. Isaiah Thomas, another basketball player, another famous guy, this week complained and said in response to Colin Kaepernick's comments, said that the portions of the white community that stand silent while this goes on are every bit as guilty as any of those white supremacists that do this. And I thought that's an interesting comment, because it was just about a year ago, after the Black Lives Matter movement called for, what do we want? Dead cops. When do we want it? Now. That a guy in Houston, Texas, walked up behind a police officer who was putting gas in his car and put a bullet in his head because, A, he was white, and B, he was a police officer. And that was in response. I didn't hear Isaiah Thomas speak up about that. I didn't hear Al Sharpton speak up about that. I didn't hear Jesse Jackson speak up about that. So if the accusation is going to be that silence equals approval, then I guess there's a lot of people guilty all the way around.
That is a huge amen on that one. Matter of fact, I forgot what the heck his name was, but he was one of the shooters on the cops, and they ended up having a video up on YouTube where he was outside a Texas police station with other members of the new Black Panthers, weapons in hand, protesting outside the police station. And this is the very same one that later on went on to kill cops. I forget what his name is. I'm having a major brain fart. But, where is the outrage there? And I keep on saying you can tie Black Lives Matter directly back to the new Black Panthers, directly back to the Nation of Islam, and from there you can go up the ladder to the Muslim Brotherhood. But no one wants to talk about this. If you're white, you're able to be a bigot, but if you're black, you're not able to be a bigot.
No, and there's a couple of black activists that I have on my radio show regularly, and they honestly believe that. You cannot be racist if you're black. And I said that's just absurd. If you do things, exhibit violent behavior or dislike someone or are angry simply based on the color of someone's skin, their ethnicity, or their background, that's racism. It doesn't matter what color you are. You can't blame one group and not apply the same rules to another. To your earlier point, I thought it was a really good one, is the inner city violence. And when you look at America, the black community makes up about 14% of our entire population, about 42 million black people out of 300 million in the United States. Last year, or in the most, it was actually 2014, the most recent statistics possible, 49% of all murder victims were black. And you think, oh my God, they're out there mowing down the black people, until you realize 93%, almost all of the black victims were killed by other black people. And I said, is there any segment of society that we can improve where white and black interaction is? Of course there is. But that doesn't mean it's not one or the other. The idea that the black community is turned on itself and has this absurd violence in the inner city, that has to be addressed as well. The fact that 72.3% of all black babies are born out of wedlock, 3 out of 4 kids born out of wedlock. And then you look at the stats on single parent, and God bless the moms. God bless the moms that have chosen to have the child instead of abortion. God bless the moms that are willing to do what they can for their kid. But statistics are clear. If you grow up in a one-parent house, you are far more likely to have trouble with drugs. You are far more likely to have criminal activity. You are far more likely to do poor in your education. And so we can't blame white oppression for that. If black dads don't take on the responsibility of being a father, that's an issue we really ought to address. And ironically, in 2009, immediately upon being put in as president of the United States, Barack Obama said that in one speech. And then we never heard it again. And so I thought there's some recognition somewhere that this goes on, that that's a real issue, that dads need to be dads. But ever since 2009 anyway, we haven't addressed it. We haven't acknowledged it. We haven't done anything. I'll probably be labeled racist for suggesting that dads ought to be dads.
Well, we can also trace it all the way back to the wonderful ideas of Lyndon Johnson, split up the family so that when they have welfare, if they're not married, they can get more money. So therefore, if you have more kids, you'll also get more welfare money. But you can't be married.
Well, and there's one thing that no one ever actually looks at, because we have different people will point at different reasons for this. You pointed at Lyndon Johnson on the welfare community, and I think there's something to that. I think there's some truth to some of that. You will have some in the black community will point towards slavery and say families were torn apart and they grew accustomed to that. I don't know if I buy that or not, but I understand the argument, whether I agree with it or not. But I lived in Africa for about a year, and one of the things I took note of is dads are not active the way they are here. You know, we have Little League and Pee Wee League and all these things that dads, fathers and sons and fathers and daughters do. In Africa, they are largely absent. This is something that is cultural that goes way beyond what we've done in America in the last 140 years. This is something that is cultural that has gone back hundreds of years, where dads are less active in their families. Now, in Africa, they stay with their same mate often, whereas here we don't. We're the children are born out of wedlock, but nonetheless they do not play an active role in the majority of cases with their kids, and I never hear that addressed here in the United States.
That's interesting. That is very interesting. Meanwhile, my co-host is being very quiet in the background, Curtis.
I'm ready to jump in.
Curtis, please jump.
I would like to say that from my dealings with black liberals, everything they talk about, everything they perceive is from a perspective of victimization. So in other words, if there is black on black crime, it's because of the system that oppressed them, and they can't help but, be violent because there's no jobs, there's no this, there's no that, and it's just a farce, when I hear things like this, because they don't take responsibility whatsoever for their own conditions. And this focus on 2%, which is police on black crime, cops killing blacks, which is less than 2%. They ignore, black on black crime, which is a bigger issue. I think it's like 98% black on black crime. That's another thing they like to separate. They'll tell you, well, that's separate from the police thing,
Right.
But, I say to them, okay, there's outrage about police, killing black people. If we take that away and just focus on black crime, I say, well, where's the outrage? I still don't hear no outrage, and I just get silence, So
it's funny, in public policy or in Washington, D.C. in particular, they have a habit of boiling things down to it is either one or the other. Either we're going to fund education or we're going to help out veterans. Or they say and do things that make no sense. It's the same here with this argument in that I don't think society as a whole is racist, but there is certainly racism out there in different pockets of society. But that isn't the only issue. When we talk about black on black crime, the way Curtis just did, or we talk about, there are multiple facets to this, and the suggestion that it is only one or only the other always irritates me, because the truth is that every problem has a bunch of different causes. Every problem has a bunch of different ways in which you need to come and try to fix it. And this certainly is no different. This is there are, for the black community to look and say, gosh, we got to tamp down on this violence. And there was a great example earlier this year. There's, as you all know, a lot of crime in both Baltimore and Washington, D.C. Crime numbers, murder numbers, violence, way up. And the police came out to a neighborhood right adjacent to mine in Washington, D.C., a black neighborhood that's had a big spike in violence. And the police and the mayor came out, had a town hall meeting, and the mayor was very excited. And she said, you know what, we're going to announce we're increasing the police presence here to make sure that we bring down violent crime that has been plaguing you. And she was booed by the audience. And so the disconnect between the community and the police is huge. And even though they have this huge spike in murders, even though they can't go out on their own street at night, they did not want more police there. And I thought, wow, we've got an issue here that goes way beyond black and white. We've got an issue where the police have some work to do as far as sitting down and making sure that they are perceived as your friend. If I have trouble, what do? I call the police. If I am wandering around the Capitol building and I'm confused, who do I talk to when I know I'm safe with? The police. But there are facets of our community that nobody understands. There is not that same safety feeling when they see a man or a woman in uniform. And I thought, that's incumbent on the police to make sure they change that perception.
Well, this is just another example of taking a molehill and making a mountain out of it. You got a few bad cops out there, yes. But the way it gets magnified is through media, especially in Hollywood movies. They're always hyping the police against the black community, how corrupt they are and how they abuse and mishandle blacks. When they see this on TV constantly, it just feeds into it, the notion that cops don't like blacks. So
right.
We got to blame Hollywood for some of this.
Well, I
agree.
have to say,
I agree.
from personal experience, having walked the foot post in Brooklyn, I would turn around, and most of us would go into the individual stores, and we would hang out where the kids were playing and start talking to people. And the cops have to be part of the community, not just the guardians of the community, but part of the community as well. Under Giuliani, we did this. We had the community policing, and it helped bring down crime under Giuliani. Didn't always agree with all of his policies because he kept on trying to cut our pay, but this is where it's the idea of us versus them. It has to stop. Once you realize that officer in uniform could be your husband, your brother, your uncle, that girl out there that's in the uniform walking the beat, could be your sister, your wife. We have to think of each other on human terms.
Did you, just to bring the conversation full circle, did you see the story out of...
Oh, we lost you? Tim, we lose you? Did we lose Tim? Or did you lose me?
I think we lost Tim.
I think we lost Tim. Well, Tim, if you can hear us, try calling back in because he just got popped off the air. Yeah. Oh, well. That was an interesting conversation until we lost Tim. But check out his website, which is his name, timconstantine.com. There is a link in the show page, so if you're looking at the show page, just click on it and it'll take you to his radio show, which is a very interesting and really good radio show. So, Tim, I hope you do call back in.
Andy, that was a good point you made. Us against them versus them mentality, and that's basically what you have under the Democrat umbrella, which is full of victims. We look at the different groups and organizations that fall under the Democrat name. It's just a bunch of victims, and they're good at manipulating, that victimhood and that mentality, and it's up to us, I guess, to not allow it to just, rule the day. We got politicians, we got people in Congress, our leadership, and they don't, seem to stand up to all this liberal propaganda and these policies coming out of the other side of the aisle. And I guess that's why we have somebody like Trump now, because people are tired of it. We got leaders that don't lead. They don't fight for us.
And Kel wrote in the chat room, Kel wrote, "Parents raise kids, Hillary, you idiot."
Not according to Hillary. It takes a neighborhood,
a village.
Whatever. A village, yeah.
A village idiot. But this is the problem. We can trace a lot of these problems, to Hollywood or blame anyone or everyone else. But it's the parents' responsibility to raise their child properly. I mean, okay, you're going to have some kids that no matter what you do, they're going to be a bad seed. But the vast majority of kids out there want to be good. They want the direction. They want their parents to show them. But parents abrogate their responsibility now because of public schooling. Just drop them off in public school. Let the teachers raise them. Let the teachers worry about them. And I don't have to worry about them for 8 hours while I sit in front of the TV and eat potato chips and drink soda. off of food stamps. This is the problem, personal responsibility. And when a parent abrogates that responsibility, then the child learns the same behavior.
Yeah.
It's going to be a cycle that repeats itself until we make people personally responsible for their own actions.
I think that where we have Republican leadership and control over schools and things like that, documentaries like Hillary's America should be required screening for all students, and maybe we can turn around things, get a little more patriotism, where we don't have people that want to sit down with a Pledge of Allegiance.
Mm-hmm. Well, Annie and Curtis, I want to know what you think about this. There's talk going around about Donald Trump going into the Bronx. I've heard that possibly he will do kind of a walkthrough with Rudy Giuliani, or, he's thinking about some type of a rally or something right in the Bronx. Do you think he will be safe? And I personally think it's a really great idea.
Well, that's the good thing. He is going into areas that normally politicians don't go into. And he's got to think outside the box. He's got to get into those inner city places. And God bless the New York City Police Department. They will make sure he is safe. Go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, I would say, too, I agree with Andy that it's a great move. He's showing the other side, a side that the establishment candidates before him, like McCain and Romney, they never went into the black neighborhood. They never even went after the black vote. Trump is different. He's worked with blacks for much longer than they want to give him credit for. Matter of fact, I was just looking at a video of Jesse Jackson some years ago praising Trump at an event because Trump had supported and probably donated to some Rainbow Coalition project. And, here we have, Jesse Jackson, praising, actually roasting Donald Trump. But you don't hear that in the mainstream media. And there's other incidents where Trump has did wonderful things for minorities, especially blacks, that doesn't make the mainstream media. But he is certainly no racist, and I think that's why he's able to go into these neighborhoods. There's more black support in Trump in the closet than the mainstream would like to others to realize.
Well, Mama Mia No Sharia Vito put in the chat room, Curtis, addressing you. He says, now that Trump is running under the Republican banner, Trump is now a racist. Isn't it funny? If you're run as a Republican or a conservative, you're a racist. But if you run as a liberal Democrat, you're not. Yet, the KKK was the arm of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, we really need to get the information out what this party is all about, its history, and why it came to being. Because I'm going to tell you, I was listening to Herman Cain recently, and a black came on the radio, his radio show, and with a pointed question, what have Republicans ever done for blacks? And that would have been a great moment for Herman Cain to educate this guy. Listen, this party itself came into being to liberate blacks from slavery. It was an abolitionist movement, and they liberated your folks. They gave your folks the right to vote, to become citizens. But Herman Cain didn't say all that, and I believe it because he doesn't know it or whatever. But we have to be able to come back at these folks, and put them straight on these things. And I think that's where we lose people. He had a response, but it was a weak one, in my estimate.
Yeah, I'm just trying to just bear with me now because I know our next guest should be calling in shortly. She has her kids with her, and I did not take her phone number with me. Oh, shit. I did not first one, did I? But I want to remind people that if you are phoning into the studio, you want to be part of the conversation, or if you are my guest calling in, please press 1 so I know to bring you on live. And I don't know what I did with Melanie's phone number. That's really smart, Annie. All right, well, I got someone that raises their hand. Just bear with me. I want to remind everyone, I'm right smack in the middle of Tropical Storm Hermine. And my power's been going up and down. My internet is down. I'm using my cell phone to call into the show and my laptop to get in onto BTR and the other stations. So just bear with me because we do have technical difficulties here, but we're working through it. Area code 817, you're on the air with Southern Sense. I'm your hostess, Annie. Who am I speaking to?
This is Melanie Graft.
Hi, Melanie. I apologize. When you called me just before going on air, my husband was trying to hook the generator up to my laptop, so at least I had power.
It's okay, and I don't have my children with me, so we got everything resolved on my end. So we are good.
Melanie, I want you to do good. I'm glad, because here in coastal South Carolina, we're getting hit. So
I'm sorry.
My power has been going up and down, and my internet looks like it's still down. My phone service is down, so I'm using my cell phone and my tablet as a hotspot for my laptop. So I'm going, what the heck else can go wrong?
No problem.
Melanie. I want to have you introduce yourself to our audience because you were brought into the spotlight when your daughter found an LBGT children's book promoting the alternative lifestyle on, a child as young as 4 years old, come on, in the public library, and you, oh, goodness gracious, you had the audacity to speak out against it, saying it wasn't age appropriate, and asking the library to move the book to another section, not remove it, just move it out of the children's section. And you caused a huge storm.
That's correct. This started in May of 2015 at our local library. My daughter was 4 at the time, and we just went for our normal visit. I have 3 children, 2 older boys, and then my daughter. And I was holding her on my hip when she picked up a brightly colored book, and it was entitled This Day in June, and proceeded to open it. And she happened to open the book to a page that depicted 2 men that were kissing, and she quickly proceeded to ask me about it, why the 2 men were kissing. I discovered that it was a children's picture book, and it was actually recommended by the American Psychological Association for ages 4 through 8, and it's a book depicting an LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender pride parade. It's very detailed in all aspects of the LGBT lifestyle, and I might also add that this book was on the very top of their new children's book display. So it was very proudly advertised for everyone to see. But later on, when I would question them about it, they would act as though the book just didn't exist and they had no knowledge of the book. So I couldn't comprehend why this book would be in the children's picture book section, as it was sexually explicit and it was very political in nature. It had things in the books like love, not hate. It even has a page where one of the gentlemen is dressed in the S&M attire. So it's very explicit. And had this book been about heterosexual sex, I would have been just as perplexed because we just don't discuss those issues at the ages of 4 to 8 in our family. When I first saw the book, I didn't say a word. I was upset, and as a Christian, I felt it was best to just come home and pray about the matter. And I also tried to convince myself that this was simply not my problem. Surely someone else would say or do something about it. And I prayed about it the rest of the day and into the entire night. And after much prayer, I became convinced that I needed to say something. And so that's when things got interesting, when I went back to the library. And the next day, I returned to the library, and I approached the librarian. I shared my concerns regarding the book. I explained that I found the book to be age inappropriate as well as sexually explicit, and it was just not appropriate for young children. And as a parent, I explained that I was robbed of the opportunity to decide if and when I would explain homosexual behavior to my daughter. My daughter found this book, and at the age of 4, I was left to explain homosexuality to her long before we even discussed the birds and the bees. And this robbed an important fundamental parental right from us. It also robbed my daughter of her innocence. In the small time that it took for her to look at that picture, that image is, forever in her mind, and something like that can never be restored. So I proceeded. One of the librarians handed me a form that was entitled Request for Reconsideration Form. She told me to go ahead and fill that out, bring it back to library. And I need to emphasize at this point, too, that this is their form generated by them and authored by them, and it's apparently handed out to any given patron who has any issue with anything at the library. But that form was later used against me. So what I did with the form was I felt, since our library is funded by taxpayer money, that I needed to talk to my friends at my church and just friends. And so I checked out the book and actually took that book and another called Princess Boy. And that book is about a little boy who likes to dress up in girls' clothing and cross-dressing and accepting that. And so I took the books and the forms to my friends, and they proceeded to fill out the forms. And I let them decide and let them fill those out. So the next time I met with the head librarian, we presented, I believe it was over 50 forms to the head librarian, and that people had filled out. At that point, she proceeded to defend the book, and I was also told that they weren't. Nobody was quite sure how this particular book proceeded to be in the library. Nobody was aware of the book. We came to find out later on that a lot of books like these are donated to the libraries for free. It's just part of the LGBT agenda. They give a lot of these books to the children or to the libraries for free. So somehow it was leaked to our local media, the newspaper out here, and it became a big firestorm. The ACLU came out. We had commissioner's court. I met with the commissioners and the county judge individually, and all we simply asked was for them to move the book. We never asked for them to ban or burn the book, as the media would tell you, but just to simply move the book to a different section so if people who still wanted access to it could have it. But people like me, what happened to me and my daughter would not happen to anyone else. Their right to parent would not be taken from them. And it turned into a firestorm. We went there. The commissioners and the judge had made up their mind, but they still had commissioner's court. I testified in commissioner's court. We were told that only individuals who lived in our county would be able to speak. But when the day came, there were people from the ACLU, the Texas Library Association, the American Library Association, and we were timed. We were given 5 minutes to speak. The other side, however, they had all the time that they wanted to speak. When Commissioner's Court was over, of course, the commissioners and the judge decided to, they left these books. This day in June was moved to the adult section because they said it was more of a teaching tool. However, we started with 3 LGBT children's books in our library. It went to 11, and we currently have 54 in our library. And so, go ahead.
No, I'm just amazed at the way that they just did an end run around you. You're only complaining about 3 books, and now they've flooded the library with all these books just to brainwash our children.
Yes, and I would, and the head librarian that had done all of this, she was awarded by the American Library Association with a $5,000 reward and a trip to New York. She's no longer at our library. She works for another library in the Metroplex here in Texas. And I have spoken with the Tea Party out there and was able to, forewarn them and tell them my story, so they're well aware of what's in their town. But it was just, there was so much. It was a firestorm, and there was so much that I just didn't expect, and so much I learned. But it was so surprising because we live in a very small town here in Texas, one that I assumed was very conservative and very Republican. However, so something like this, I didn't expect for it to turn out this way. But our town isn't exactly what it appears to be. We soon found out.
Found out the hard way. They are trying to force into us that this is a normal lifestyle, when it actually involves like 1% of our population. But yet it's going to be something that everyone must be exposed to. And this is what I disagree with. I don't care what you do behind your closed doors. That's your business. It does not have to be in my face. You do not have to tell my religion how to behave. I'm not going to tell you how to behave, but just don't force it on our children. These kids, their minds are not formed yet. Their sexuality is not developed yet, and yet they want to start on these children as young as 4. That's child abuse, plain and simple child abuse. The New England Journal of Medicine had published an article that said the human sexuality in the brain is not fully developed until the age of 27. And yet they want to influence children as young as 4. And actually, they're influence children as young as 1. Yeah,
right.
This is what we've got to stop. Let these children grow up normally and let them decide how they want to be when they become adults. Don't start on them as a child, really.
Well, and it's funny because when I was growing up, we never even thought about those things, and until my daughter came across this book, she never thought of it. I have 2 boys who are currently 11 and 8, and they never talked about it or thought about it. But as you said, this is being, it's being forced upon them.
It's the John Bennett syndrome. You sexualize them at a young age. And our society allowed this to happen. And brave people like you are speaking out about it. And thank you for that.
You're welcome. We and here in Texas too, I couldn't. Here in Texas we have the Texas Constitution. So the other part of this was, where in the Texas Constitution does the library, are they granted the authority to usurp our rights as parents and make these choices for us? It was always about parental rights, but of course they took it and they spun it and made it about other things. But that was just something, I guess they never, they took it the direction they wanted to, because I guess it made a better story for that regard.
No, I guess so, but I am still flabbergasted that they continue to push this agenda instead of saying, all right, let's just move it over to the adult section, and then there's no fight. There's absolutely no fight. But in order to flaunt their lifestyle as being that of the average American, when it's not, it's amazing.
And that's an interesting point that you make, too, about just moving the book, because about a month prior to this ordeal, my boys like to read Justice League, their comic books, and they went to look for the comic books, and they couldn't find them in the children's section. And so we asked where they were, and we were told that they were moved to the young adult section because a parent had complained about the way that the superheroes were dressed. They simply just moved the books. When we asked them to move these books, they said that it would be censoring. But when it was the superhero books, it wasn't considered censoring at that time, and there was no media, there was no commissioner's court, there was none of that. And I just believe because there was no agenda with those particular books, but there was agenda with the LGBT children's books.
Melanie, of the major issues we face in this country today, with poverty being one, immigration being the other, political corruption being the third, and Islamic jihad being the fourth, I believe the LGBT agenda ranks right up there with those 4. And we're going to have to fight this and defeat it, because the ultimate goal to make their lifestyle here in America mainstream, and that I truly believe. And like I said, we got to stop it before it just get out of hand.
It's a very hard thing to stop. I found as I didn't realize until this happened that the American Library Association, they have their own little LGBT round table within the American Library Association. The same with the Texas Library Association, and even this went before the library board here as well. And they had a very well thought out and detailed defense for these books. And the board actually reached the decision that these books were harmless and they should remain, and that the library would not censor anything. And so my question was, too, if they could not censor anything, then why did those forms that they give me even exist? Why all the trouble? If it was a total dictatorship, then why fake the concern? And furthermore, they found these books. They said they were just innocent, cute books for children. And what's more disturbing is that one of the board members that came to that decision is a pastor in our town. And he didn't, and I found that hard to believe, because to me the Bible, it's very clear about what it says about this type of lifestyle. But the board made their decision, and it was finalized by the head librarian. And so it just seems that the indoctrination is everywhere.
It is, and I think that if those who are morally on the right would speak out, and that includes the church,
yes,
I think we could defeat this, because there are ministers on the left who think this is just great. You do have homosexual pastors and stuff out there now. Like I said, their goal is to become mainstream America, and got to stop it, because it's a morality issue. It really is, for those who believe in the good book.
Well, and you bring up another interesting point as well. When I went through this, I expected that I expected that the other side would be against me, and I expected to be persecuted for that. But what I didn't expect, what really caught me off guard, is I will say there were several pastors and churches that did support me, but we're a town of 60-plus churches. It was just a handful that supported me, and most of them did not. And some of them spoke out against me. I was told, this is just the way it is. You just have to accept this. You need to not speak out about this. You're being hateful, from some associate pastors. And that threw me for a loop. I think that was the hardest part, because that I didn't see that coming. I guess I just assumed that the churches would all be on the same page, but that didn't turn out to be the case with this.
Well, see, your situation exposed somewhat just like Donald Trump exposed in Washington, that we're not really all on the same page,
Right.
And it's an eye opener. It really is.
This is true. This is true.
I call it moral cowardice, actually. We had a pastor that spoke out against the same-sex marriage ruling of the Supreme Court during his sermon. And then the following sermon he preached, he ended up taking it back and apologizing, because someone in the congregation complained about him speaking out against same-sex marriage and the Supreme Court ruling. My pastor, up until that point, I thought of him as a solid Christian and conservative. At that point, I was saying, wait a minute, where is the moral courage in telling that parishioner that called out about this and complained about his sermon, no, this is what the Bible says, this is what we teach, this is what our religion believes. The government has no business defining marriage, much less telling me whether or not a same-sex marriage is morally correct.
Right.
This moral cowardice is what I call it.
Well, and I was always under the assumption that the Supreme Court was there to interpret laws, not to make laws.
Yes, exactly. Then this is what they are not doing. They're not interpreting the laws according to the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution is marriage defined either. It is our state's right. I still say government has no business in defining the word marriage, because once they do, they then define our religion, and then they create a religion by defining it, which is in complete violation of the First Amendment.
Right.
So we got ourselves a conundrum. So where do you stand now in this book fight?
On the book fight now, what I've been doing is I've been speaking to local conservative groups and just getting my story out there, making people aware. Most people aren't even aware, as I wasn't until this happened, that these kind of books are even in our children's section, that these books even exist. I wasn't aware until this happened. So I speak to local conservative groups. I speak to groups like yours over the radio. I encourage people to, most libraries, you can go online and check their catalog. You can simply Google LGBT children's books, and and you'll be amazed at how many there really are. It's really sad. But if you can Google those titles, and it's so simple. You go to your online library website and just type those titles in and see what you have in your library. See what pops up. So you can check, and I would suggest not just checking your libraries, but checking your school libraries as well, doing some research there as well. If they have forms like our library did, I suggest filling out those forms. The more people who do it, the better. It's important to, use the word to move the book. You don't, because the whole thing with the censoring, to make our voices heard and include the pastors that are willing, the religious people who are willing to join the good fight, to inform people via social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, to school boards, their city councils, a commissioner's court if you're in a county, become politically involved, make others aware, mothers of preschool groups, parent groups, Sunday school groups. Find out where your church stands, too. Find out where your pastor stands on this issue as well. That's something that really surprised me. Liberals have been doing this kind of thing for a long time, and they're very patient. And so I think that we just need to take some of the things that they've been doing and start doing. We need to, overwhelm them with work. The more of us that speak out and group together and fill out these forms and say, hey, you know what, this isn't okay, because we're talking about our children here. And even if your children are grown, we're talking about grandchildren, nieces, nephews, children in the community. Somebody has to stand in the gap for our children and protect them. This is their innocence. And so we have to stand in the gap. This is a real war on our children and their innocence. Find out where your politicians stand. Find out what they think. And if they're not on the same page, then I would suggest, making sure you elect somebody else next time they're up for election. And then the other thing we can do, too, is to donate morally sound books to libraries. I know somebody at our library donated some of Rush Limbaugh's great children's books. My children love to read those books, or Christian books. Just to don't flood them with good morally sound books. So that's what I've been doing, and I've become more politically involved as well. I've become involved as a precinct chair in our community, and working, pretty much just praying and asking God, where would you have me to go? What would you have me to do? And allowing him to use me and speaking and just making people aware whenever I can.
See, I believe that the parents need to get more involved in their schools, PAs or PTOs, as they call them down here, and find out what their children are being taught and what their, the assignments they are given to read at home. And like you said, what's in the library, because a lot of parents just don't know, either because they work all day and they're too tired at the end of the day, or whatever it is, or they're on drugs or whatever, but they don't get involved with what's going on with their children's education. Now back to the pastors, I want to ask you, do you think some of these ministers are afraid to speak out because they're afraid they may lose their tax exemption status?
I can't say for sure because none of them specifically told me that, but it could be. It very well could be. I think too that it's also very hard. I think a lot of people I know this was hard for me to speak out. A lot of people that I thought were my friends are no longer my friends. I mean, you find out it's not a popular thing to do, and this is a small town, and so you're either loved or you're hated for what you do. But I didn't do it for that reason. It was very clear that God was convicting me, and I know that someday I'm going to have to stand before Him, and I'm going to have to answer for why I did or did not do what He asked me to do. But it was the hardest thing I ever had to do, and I've since then developed a much thicker skin. But I think it's hard for people. We've become so soft in our culture that there's many a times when we know we should speak up, but we don't for fear of losing friends or just because of the persecution that we might endure. And so. Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't.
Political correction.
Oh yeah, we've been so indoctrinated with that as well. Like with this scenario, with what happened to me, I was told that I was a bigot, a hater, just called, every name in the book. When Commissioner's Court was went over that day, our children were in an undisclosed location. I was led out by a sheriff's deputy, and we didn't go home right away because we just didn't know. We didn't know what would happen. Everything ended up being fine, but it was a very scary road. But I would tell you that I would do the same thing today. That's my daughter, and what's funny is everything that was brought up in court. It was all about I hate being a bigot and not loving this kind of lifestyle. But nobody ever talked about how this affected my daughter or how this would affect other children who would be exposed to this kind of literature. So where was the concern? I mean, it really reveals the true heart of the matter when there was zero concern and zero discussion about the children and how this would affect them. I mean, that's very revealing to me.
Well, what I find amazing is that they are promoting a sexual lifestyle with children that are not old enough to be engaging in sex.
Exactly.
That's the part that disturbs me the most. You have an age of consent. At that point, if you want to say that these other alternative lifestyles exist at the age of consent, fine. But don't try to indoctrinate a child whose brain is not developed, does not have the ability to think things logically through yet, does not have a moral compass yet formed, and yet you're going to give them something that we personally feel is immoral, is against our religion and our beliefs. Let me raise my child the way I choose, and you raise your child the way you choose. If you think this is appropriate for your child, I just hope they're not going to be in the same play group as mine.
Well,
and that's promoting the sexual acts.
Right, and it was always about age appropriateness and parental rights. But they took that and, like I said, they twisted it and made it something else. But that's always what it was. We as parents have the right. We have the right to choose on how we're going to raise our children. And I'd like to say too, what the gentleman touched on too about being aware, what they're reading in school and just being aware, parenting is hard. It's exhausting. It really is. But it is our duty as parents. I work part-time as well. It is our duty to know this, especially as parents, this is our priority to know what they're reading, what they're being taught in school. Because if we're not aware and if we're not proactive about that and we don't do that and there's a void there, somebody else will fill that void. And more times than not, I don't think we're going to like what they're going to fill that void with, because they're waiting to fill that void. I mean, this kind of thing with this kind of agenda, they're anxiously waiting to fill the void where we as the parents, where we're not paying attention or we're not aware. So I think that we have to take our job very, seriously. It's a hard job, but it's the most important job there is. And if we're not standing in the gap and we're not watching for them and we're their biggest advocate, and if we're not speaking out and protecting them, well, then who is?
That is truly important. Ever since they came up with the public school system, parents have been abrogating their responsibility to government instead of being responsible. Here you brought this life into the world, and you are now responsible for this life. But if you want to take the easy way out, just drop them in the school, drop them at their play dates, or drop them at whatever community center where they can all get into trouble together, or just not even pay attention to them, is what we're seeing in society. But you have parents like yourself that are responsible and do want to raise your kids the right way. And it becomes very difficult for you to do that because the easy way looks so much more attractive.
It does on the surface, but once you go through something like this, you realize that it's really, really not. I mean, when you realize what they're trying to subject our children to, and just how awful it really is and destructive, we need to be the warriors for our children. We just do, and that's where we've come to in our place in society, I believe, is that it's not enough to just be a parent. We have to fight for our children, and we need to be aware of really everything that they're being exposed to. And it's sad, but I believe that's where we are today.
The worst part is, as I said, the child's mind and personality is not developed yet. So, of course, the child will want to try to experiment because, hey, listen, it looks good in the book and it says it's okay.
Right.
So, handing a child a loaded gun, okay, also, without proper supervision? No. Mm-mm. And to me, handing this book to a child is the same thing as handing them a loaded gun, an easy way to kill the poor kid.
Right. And it's, I was deeply concerned about how what happened last summer might affect my 3 children, and I prayed about it because that was my biggest concern, is how is this going to affect them. They went through it with us. I mean, they couldn't help but not go through it with us. And one day, my oldest son said to me, he was dealing with a bully in the neighborhood, and he said to me, Mom, he stood up to him one day, and he said to me, Mom, he said, I just realized that I needed to stand up to him. He goes, because you taught me that sometimes we just have to stand up. And I just thought, to me, that was just an answer to prayer, to know that because I prayed that it wouldn't adversely affect them. And to hear him say that, it was just such a gift to know that, okay, he was able to take something positive from this. And that, and I guess, we've had to openly discuss this with our children at a very young age, a lot sooner than we wanted to, but there was some good, there was some good that came out of something that seemed at the time to be bad. So.
Well, I just want to commend you for the courage you've shown and for standing up, for what is right and what is moral. And remember this always, where there's one in God, you have a majority. Always remember that.
Thank you for the encouragement. And just if you would just continue to pray for our family. And I just want to say, too, that looking back on it now, I certainly didn't feel courageous. I just felt, and I'm actually a very shy person that really I keep to myself. So God equips us when we're faced with something. I just want to say this to encourage other people that are out there who might be dealing with something, or maybe they need to speak up or stand up. I was absolutely terrified, but God equipped me. I'm very shy. I'm not a public speaker, but he equipped me to do what he asked me to do. And I just felt, I knew that it was very clear what he was convicting me of and asking me to do. And so for me to not do what he asked me, it was better to do what he asked me to do and suffer the consequences, whatever they might be here. But whenever he really does, when he asks us to do something, he does equip us. And so I hope that encourages anybody out there who might be needing to speak up or stand up.
Well, the wonderful thing is that you're willing to talk about your faith. Too many times when someone starts to profess their faith in public, they're shouted down. They're told to shut up. We don't want to hear it. Don't proselytize with us. But we have to speak out about our faith. We have to do, as you said, God wants us to do, is to send his word out there, to bring people into his fold. You know, if you don't want to listen, fine. But don't tell me to shut up. And I'm glad that you are not letting anyone tell you shut up.
Well, one thing, and that's a good point that you bring up as well, because to me, like I said, I'm not willing to say no to my God. I'm not willing to deny my God. I won't do that. And so I can't do that. I can't, as a Christian, I can't do that. I would rather suffer the persecution here because I know that someday I'm going to have to stand before him and I'm going to have to answer for what I did and what I didn't do. And that terrifies me more than maybe people not liking me or calling me names. I guess you could say I have a healthy fear of God, but more than that, I love him, and I want to do what's right.
You know, it's funny. Our rector at one point, they were doing a series of lessons teaching about the truth of Islam in our church, and he asked the question that should you have a gun pointed at your head, would you defend your Christianity and not convert to Islam? And my girlfriend and I shot our hands up saying, we will defend Christianity. And he looked at us like no one else in the room raised their hands, looked at us, and we said, we've already done that. I mean, I was a cop. I carried a gun. I'm not going to be afraid to turn around and defend myself and my fellow man. But this is what we have to do, defend our faith, even though you have a gun at your head.
Right. And it's not easy, but and that's where we'll see the divide too, I believe, with those that will and those that won't. But
there's so much to talk about on this one. But how are your kids doing now?
They're doing well. They're doing very well. They have very, there's a lot of good that came out of this. They have very strong convictions. They're strong in their Christian walk, and I think in some ways this just solidified that for them. It doesn't seem to. It really. I guess the answer to prayer is that it hasn't really seemed to adversely affect them at all. They've become a lot bolder, and I think all of the fears that I had about what we went through, none of those came to fruition, and so they're really doing very well. I'd say they're probably better off today because they're not afraid. They're certainly not afraid to stand up for what they believe in. My daughter is now 5, and for example, when we go to the grocery store, she will be grocery shopping, and she's 5, and she'll just go up to people and say, "Do you believe in Jesus? Are you a Christian?" And she has no reservations about sharing her faith with other people, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to watch. I mean, I was absolutely terrified when we went through this last summer, but God was my strength. I mean, he was all of my strength, and we grew. Especially, we were always close, but our relationship with God just grew even closer. My husband as well, and I think my children did as well. And so there's been so much good fruit that's come out of that. And so, she's not shy to share her faith. And my oldest son and my middle son, they're not afraid to speak out. They'll speak out. Today, one of them told me, we don't read things like Harry Potter because of witchcraft and things like that. And one of them today told me, they said, hey, I told my friend that might not be a good choice. And so they are very bold, and they're not afraid to speak up and speak out. And so I hope for the next generation with my children, I'm hoping that I'm imparting to them, to stand up for their faith, to be brave, to know when to speak, and there's times to be quiet too, but to not be afraid. And we've had the conversation, like you said, we've had the conversation with them several years ago that, hey, someday someone might say, hey, do you believe in Jesus? And if you do, they might, it might cost us our life. And we've talked about that. So these are conversations that we've had, but I think they're actually better off today than they were a year ago.
Well, with children like yours, then our nation's in good hands.
Well, they are children too, so they do act up. I'd just like to say that so people don't think that I have perfect children or that I'm a perfect mom, because my husband will tell you and I will tell you that I certainly am not. I just want to get that out there. I am not a perfect mom.
Hey, I just want to ask, have you received any national attention for your efforts, and have any national groups come to you to aid you in your cause?
Liberty Counsel was trying to help us while we were going through this. There wasn't anything legally that it seemed that they could do, but they were a huge support system for us. A local senator, Senator Brian Birdwell, he was and his wife Mel Birdwell. They were a huge support system for me, and I don't know what I would have done without them. They were just an immense help. The local Tea Party here was a great help. There were several churches and pastors that did support me. There were friends and neighbors that supported me. But as far as national attention, I was able to do my very first radio interview. I was able to do with Matt Staver with the Liberty Counsel. But as far as national attention, no, the story did get out. If you Google it, the story was all over our county, all over Texas, all over our country. There was even an outlet, I believe, in England that had the story. Much of it was incorrect because the media never came to me to ask me my side of the story. They still, to this day, never have. So as far as national attention, really, no, nothing like that. And we tried to. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But now you're being heard nationally.
That makes me just a little nervous. Like I said, I'm not a very eloquent public speaker, so, but that's not the point. Thank you. I just really want to get my story out there so people are aware, so they know what to look for, how to look for it, what they can do to fight back, and to encourage people. Just to encourage people that it's not over until we stop fighting. As long as we're fighting, as long as we're standing up, I mean, it's what we're called to do. I believe as Christians too. There's a time when we need to speak up and speak out. And like I said, these are our children. This is their innocence. And what more innocent and more precious and something that's so worth protecting than our children? There's nothing more that's just, I mean, they're worth our time and our attention. They're worth all of this and more.
Yeah, it's just a shame that someone wants to take their innocence away from them. And they have no right to interfere, but they will. They will tell you what to do, how to do. I mean, good Lord, they're telling us what type of toilets and light bulbs to buy. They're trying to control us from cradle to grave, And if we allow them to do that, then we're all the more shame on us. And
I agree. That's my biggest frustration, too. And it's not just with this issue. It's with so many issues. Is, where are the crowds? I know that we're not alone. I believe we are the majority. But why aren't we speaking out on so many issues, not just this, but like the other issues you talked about at the beginning when I came on? I believe we're the majority, but we have to speak out, and we have to get to work. It's not enough to just believe what we believe. We have to be busy about doing something. What does that look like? It could mean, getting involved in our local politics. A lot of times when we look at things from the federal level, it's very overwhelming. But we can change things in our own backyard. So if we all started with making that change in our own backyard, I think that would just have a ripple effect all the way to the top. So we can get involved in our local politics. Maybe if God is calling us to run for a local office or a precinct chair, or get involved with a Tea Party or Republican Party in your local area. But it's kind of like we got to, I know we all like to rest, and maybe we need to give up our favorite TV show and get out there and become involved, give something up to make the time to be able to fight back. So those are all things that we can all do.
Well, it sounds like
with the Trump win in November, we might begin to, start turning things around with this country. And as far as speaking, hey, you're 1,000 times better than Donald Trump, and look how popular he is.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
But it sounds like that you listened to my show before, because you said exactly what I say. You've got to get out there. You've got to be involved in the local level, from the dog catcher all the way on up. Like you, I'm the precinct chairwoman for my Republican Party, also the legislative chair for my Republican Party. I'm the leader of my local Tea Party. And then I do this show to get more of my voice out. So, you've got it right. This is what people have to do. Start at the grassroots, because that person that's on your county council, your city council, will go on to become elected at the state level, and then go from the state level to the federal level. So we've got to get it here at the grassroots level, so that when that person advances, they will be advancing our conservative ideas.
That's right. And thank you for everything that you do, because we need people to be warriors like you are. And if you think about it, I think about this often, and somebody else mentioned this to me. This is not my original thought, but if you think about the people, our founding fathers that went before us, how they had to fight, the sacrifices that they made so that we could have our freedom, or think about our military and the sacrifices that they make so that we can have our freedom. We're not even being asked to do what they had to do. It's not even that hard, and we don't even have to make the sacrifices that they did. So this will cost us time, and we may have to give something else up, but we're not even being asked to sacrifice to the extent that they did. But shouldn't we continue to fight to have our freedom? I believe we should. And it's not going to cost us even what it cost them. But if we don't fight, we will lose what we have. And I believe that's what we're with this election coming up in November, that's what we could stand to lose if we don't get out there and fight. I mean, I believe it's imperative. And we don't have time to wait or be, let somebody else do it. Like I originally thought with this library issue, I thought somebody else will see it, somebody else will do it. Well, that's not the right way to think about these things.
No. And Wild Guide wrote in the chat room, bad things happen when good people do nothing and get involved, which is exactly what you were saying. People have to get involved. You got to know what your school board is doing, what your local council is doing. You've got to know what is out there. I mean, county council sees me sitting there in the audience, and there goes the heads up, oh, great, what is she here for now?
Well, and that's so true, because when all of this started happening, like I told you, I assumed that I became very complacent, because I moved from the Metroplex in Texas to this little country town, And I became very complacent and lazy. And I thought, I live in this conservative Christian town, and I just kind of put my feet up. I'm here now. I'm good. There's nothing I need to do here. And when this happened, and then it was, somebody said it's kind of like peeling the layers off an onion. We went to commissioner's court, and all of them were Republicans, but none of them made a decision for our side. And we saw that, and we thought, okay, well, these are Republicans, but they're not basing decisions off of conservative beliefs. And so we started taking a closer look at that. And then we went to a school board meeting. Oh, and we were surprised what we saw and heard there. And then you go to a city council meeting, and you're appalled at what you see and hear there. And pretty soon, what I assumed to be a very conservative Christian town, I was made aware this is a very corrupt town, and we have work to do in our own backyard because most of us, like myself, we haven't been paying attention, and these people have been doing pretty much just whatever they want to. And we're paying for it.
No, exactly. And we're going to keep on paying for it, because if it's not the school books that they're getting into, it's a tax or it's something else. There's always an agenda. I mean, we have a Commerce Park here that I stopped the county council from purchasing, so the city went and picked it up, and now for the last 5 years it's been sitting there empty.
Wow.
So it's like, hey, listen, you guys didn't get the message. You didn't hear anything we were saying about it's not a good idea to buy this Commerce Park. I mean, you're here to govern, you're not here to do business. You're here to govern and govern only. But the city decided otherwise, and now they've got this $2 million albatross around their neck, and they don't know what to do with it. So, yes, we do have to get involved on all levels. Well, Melanie, it has been a blast having you on there, and I wish you the best of luck for your fight that you have going on. You do have a Facebook page up there. What the heck was the name of the Facebook page? I Support Melanie Graft that people can check out, correct?
Well, that is not my Facebook page. Somebody else started that, but they may check that out. They may check that out. I have an email that I don't mind giving out if people would like to get more information, or if they need some support or have questions or help. I don't mind giving an email address out for them to be able to contact me that way as well.
Okay, go ahead.
It's it might be hard to hear over the letters over the phone, but I'll do my best. M as in Melanie, G as in Gary, Racing, RACING @att.net.
So mgracing@att.net.
Right, mgracing@att.net. And I just want to thank you for the...
Fan.
I'm sorry?
You a NASCAR fan then?
Well, I was raised that way. I do, and then when I was little, I said I was going to be a race car driver when I grew up. Well, that never happened, but that never happened. But it still maybe could. I'm not done yet, so it could still happen. But really, the story behind the email address is I like to run, and I used to run ultramarathons and marathons. And then we ride dirt bikes, and my husband always dreamed someday of having a motocross team with our family. And so it has a couple of different meanings, and so we just so that's the meaning behind the email address.
Well, Melanie, I wish you a lot of good luck, and thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Good luck, and God bless. All right, we only got a few minutes left on the clock right here now, Curtis, and we're going to be back here on Tuesday. We have a friend of mine, Kyriakos Zouras, who's going to be with us. He is a phenomenal guest. And then towards the end of next week, we have Danae coming back on, and I've got Mike Gonzalez coming with it also. We've got a lot of great shows lined up, and don't forget the 16th of September is Constitution Day. So tune in that one. We've got a great show. You've got a great show. Yep, your two friends will be with us, as well as Chris Papps. He's got a Great new book out there. Also, should be in my mailbox hopefully today if the wind doesn't take it down. But anyone that's in the path of Tropical Storm Hermati, however they pronounce it, this tropical storm, bear down because my power's been going up and down all day. Hopefully the worst of it has passed through. But just be careful if you're further up the coast. And until then, I guess that's all we got to go on, Curtis.
Well, I'm ready for next week. I'm ready to tackle that.
We also I'm sorry. I was just going to give a shout out to Sweet Sue for her call in, and she tirelessly puts the shows out there for my show and other people, putting it up there on Twitter. So God bless that woman. She is a blessing to us all. So Curtis, until then, I say good night and God bless. And we're out of here. Oh, this thing will work here.
If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan. Health care plan. Health care plan.
Those who vote the wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place of the left hypocrisy. Little pink outfit for you and me. Oh, welcome to the place. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Here in the land of the not so free.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
Come expect us to
not interested in photo ops.